What's going on, Crimson Tide fans? We are back for another video here on the Alabama Football Report. And coming up on today's show, we are breaking down 10 players to watch this weekend for Alabama versus South Carolina. We're going to do 5 players on the Alabama side of things, and we're also going to do 5 players on the South Carolina side as well. Before we get into that, though, make sure you guys hit that sub button. I know the third Saturday in October has already passed us here, and we won that game, but Tennessee Football Talk still beating us in subscribers in the month of October. So let's show Joey Peterson that just because that game, is past us at this point, that, we are not ready to be beating or done beating Tennessee here. So make sure you guys hit that sub button. Let's catch some ground here at the end of the month to try to catch Tennessee Football Talk in subscribers. All right, let's start off with some South Carolina players to start off our players to watch video here. Let's start off here with quarterback LaNorris Sellers. He just has not been the guy that, pretty much everybody expected him to be so far this season. He's only had 2 games now where he's thrown for over 200 passing yards. That's not something that I thought I was going to say. I know, a lot of people talk about LaNorris Sellers and the threat that he has with his legs, but man, this guy has an absolute cannon for an arm, and this South Carolina offense just cannot really utilize him to the best of his ability. That Vanderbilt game, he, ended up getting knocked out with a concussion, so you can kind of scratch that one there. Other than that, he's been taking care of the football pretty well. Only has 2 interceptions so far this season, but still, if you would have told me by the time Alabama got to this game against South Carolina that LaNorris Sellers would only have 1 rushing touchdown and 5 passing touchdowns and, barely be over that 1,100-yard mark passing, I would have said you were crazy. So, we'll see. I'm sure South Carolina is going to change up some things for this game. I'm sure they're going to throw the kitchen sink at this Alabama team coming up this weekend. So, just make sure you're ready. I'm sure they're going to throw some different things at Alabama this weekend. We'll see if LaNorris Sellers, he'd have to have the best game of the season so far to beat the Crimson Tide. All right, player to watch at number 2 is going to be the starting running back for South Carolina, Rashul Faison. He's been okay so far this year. I pretty much say anything over 4 yards per carry is pretty good. 64 carries, 281 yards for him. I know Alabama has struggled at times this year, in their run defense. They're number 83 in the country right now in terms of, giving up those yards per game on the ground there. So, you got to be able to set the edge. You got to be able to do your job. You cannot let him bounce outside, because if he does, I'm sure he could pick up some, big chunk yardage in this game against this Alabama defense. So, you just got to be able to do your jobs, set the edge, play with, some good leverage against this team this week, and hopefully you can keep that South Carolina run game in check. All right, number 8 player to watch here. We're counting backwards from 10 here. Number 3 player for South Carolina, though, is going to be Nyck Harbor. Now, he is not South Carolina's number 1 wide receiver. He is their number 2 wide receiver this year, but he's 6'5", 235 pounds with insane speed to go along with that as well. He's only got 17 catches this year. It just goes along with the same thing that we've been talking about with the South Carolina offense. They just haven't been as good as a lot of people, thought that they were going to be this year. He, just like, LaNorris Sellers, was expected to have a monster season this year, and just it really hasn't really taken hold for the South Carolina offense. And Alabama was able to do a pretty decent job last week in that Tennessee game against, Chris Brazzell. They were able to keep him kind of in check in that game. I'm expecting for Shane Beamer to mix a lot of stuff up this weekend, and I'm sure you're going to see some stuff that, South Carolina probably hasn't put on tape so far this year. So, be ready for surprises, whether it's something on offense or even, special teams, whether it's, fake punts, onside kicks that you might not have expected there. I'm sure they're going to throw the kitchen sink at Alabama, and Nyck Harbor can be a very, very big weapon for this South Carolina offense if they utilize him the right way. So let me know what you guys think down at the pinned comment of today's video. Is this a trap game for Alabama? Type Y for yes or N for no. Let me know what you guys think. It's a South Carolina team whose roster is a whole lot better than what their record shows right now. So let me know what you guys think. It's also their homecoming game as well. So, crazy things can happen this week. Let me know, though. Do you think it's a trap game? Type Y for yes or N for no. All right, number 7 here. Going to be talking about Dylan Stewart. We know what Dylan Stewart is, man. He's not even eligible for the NFL draft this year, but if he was, he would be probably a first-round draft pick if he was eligible to go to the NFL draft this year. He's having an even better season than he did last year, and, man, I am very, very nervous whether if he's going up against Wilkin Formby or Michael Carroll. This dude's a dog. I'm sure he's going to get a sack or two in this game. I'm sure he's going to have some pressures in this game. Alabama's offensive line has got to make sure to not let South Carolina get pressure with only 4. If South Carolina gets pressure in this game, they're going to have to bring a blitz. Alabama might have a day. You saw it against Missouri. At times, they were able to get pressure with only 4 guys, 2 edge rushers there on the outside that were really, really good. And, man, Dylan Stewart's having a better season this year in only half the games that he played last year. And if you think about that as well, he went out in the first quarter last week. So, I mean, he's played in 7 games, but really, he's only played in 6 games there. He's already got more tackles. He's almost there on TFLs. He's about halfway on sacks, and he's halfway there on pressures as well. So just being able to contain Dylan Stewart, not let him have like 5 sacks in this game, I would say that, that would be a win for this Alabama team. All right, on the flip side of things, you got Bryan Thomas Jr. on the other side of the ball for South Carolina. He's also had a really, really good season to start off this year as well. South Carolina always seems to really have good defensive ends there, and Bryan Thomas Jr. has also had a really good start to the season as well there. 20 pressures. That's pretty crazy. 20 pressures. Dylan Stewart has 24 pressures for him as well. He actually has more sacks than Dylan Stewart as well. So, whether it's Kadyn Proctor or whoever's playing right tackle over there, those guys are going to have their hands full in this game this weekend. All right, we'll continue with some players to watch for the Crimson Tide here in just a second, but this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every single day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this football season on PrizePicks, where it is good to be right. I use PrizePicks for a ton of different types of sporting events, guys, whether it's professional football, baseball, professional basketball is now back as well. You got college sports, MMA, boxing, and so much more. PrizePicks is a ton of fun, and if you guys know ball, you can win real money all season long. This is what we got cooked up for the power play this weekend. Going with Jeremy Bernard, more than receiving yards at 60.5. LaNorris Sellers going with the half interception for him. Alabama was able to ice the game last year with an interception. We'll see if they can take the ball away from LaNorris Sellers again this week, and then going with Ty Simpson, more than just a 1.5 touchdown passes for him. PrizePicks is super simple to play. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get your picks right, you could cash in today. PrizePicks is the only app that offers stacks, meaning that you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. You want more than on Josh Allen pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns? Now you can pick all of them in the same lineup only on PrizePicks. So download the PrizePicks app today and use promo code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That link is down in the description of today's show. It's also at the pinned comment of today's show as well. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. All right, let's get to the Alabama players to watch in this one here. Let's start off with Tim Keenan. I think you can also throw in London Simmons and James Smith in there too. Those guys, just kind of those guys right there in the center of this Alabama defense along the defensive line. South Carolina has played 8 players now along the offensive line who have at least 100 snaps. It would be 10, but 2 of those guys are, have been playing inline tight end, so I don't really count them there. But 8 players along your, just general 5 offensive line spots there who have played at least 100 snaps. And what interests me the most, I think, is who South Carolina is going to end up playing at center. They played 2 guys there so far this year, Boaz Stanley and Rodney Newsome Jr. Both of these guys have already given up 3 sacks apiece so far this year. Now, both guys have also played a little bit of guard. I think Boaz Stanley has played some right guard, and then Rodney Newsom has played some left guard for this South Carolina team as well. But, both of them have given up some sacks. They've given up some pressures so far this season. So I'm very interested to see if those guys like, Tim Keenan, James Smith, London Simmons, if they can really generate some pass rush for Alabama's defensive line along the interior. All right, player to watch number 2 now for the Crimson Tide. It's going to be Daniel Hill. Ryan Grubb said in his press conference on Monday that he really does want to get Daniel Hill more involved in this offense. And I think a lot of it might come more towards the end of games when teams are tired. Alabama's rotating a lot of offensive linemen, keeping those guys fresh. Jam Miller's definitely your number one running back, but I still think running back 2 is kind of up for grabs. Is it Kevin Riley? Right now, I think it is. But Daniel Hill's right there as well, and he's a big, big-ass dude. And against Tennessee, he came in and, he was able to close the game out in a game that Jam Miller just wasn't, having his best game there. So, still almost averaged 5 yards per carry there, whether it's, 3rd and short or at the end of the game, maybe, those goal line plays as well. I think Daniel Hill is going to get some more run here for Alabama, has had a couple touchdowns here in the past couple weeks, including that receiving touchdown that he had against Missouri as well. I think Daniel Hill is going to be one to watch in this game. So I want to get your predictions down inside the comments section. How many carries will Daniel Hill have this weekend against South Carolina? Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section of today's video. All right, player to watch number 3 now. It's going to be Kadyn Proctor, and I only put him on this list really because last week we did not see that crispy package where, Kadyn Proctor lines up in a different spot, whether it's at the Wildcat quarterback or, receiver, anything like that, at running back, whatever it is. We did not get to see it last week against Tennessee. There really wasn't a time where I really thought that they needed to break it out in that game, but I put him on here because I'm really excited about that for Kadyn Proctor, just, getting his chances out there. I still think the next evolution to this Kadyn Proctor package is having him throw for a touchdown pass. So we'll see what happens, but Kadyn Proctor is going to be number 3 for our Alabama players to watch. Number 4, I know we're doing players to watch, but I still wanted to put Kalen DeBoer on this list as well. Do they have the boys prepared for everything this weekend? I'm sure South Carolina is going to throw the kitchen sink at Alabama this weekend, whether it's, a fake punt, a fake field goal, some kind of crazy trick play where, somebody else not named LaNorris Sellers ends up throwing the football or whatever it ends up being. Do they have them prepared for any type of situation that South Carolina can throw at them? They were down last year, and South Carolina being down last year is what I'm trying to say there. I think they were 2-3 going into that game. And they played Alabama very close in that one. They even had a chance to win the game at the end of that game. You had to rely on that, last-second interception that LaNorris Sellers threw. That was a really, really bad ball, by the way. But, it seems like this Alabama team right now is really locked in. They're not letting this noise and, from the outside, from the media, from, us here at Chat Sports, the rat poison. They're not letting that get to them right now. It's what it seems like anyways. But this game has always been one to watch from the very beginning of the season. I know a lot of people were really nervous about this game, including myself. This is one of the games that I had Alabama losing in the preseason, but I didn't really realize South Carolina was going to be as bad as they have been so far this year. But if they can go out there expecting to win just because South Carolina hasn't really looked good so far this season, it could end up being a long day for Alabama. This is a very, very, talented roster that they have. The offense just really hasn't been able to get it going. So, it's all going to be up to Kalen DeBoer this week to, keep this team grounded and have them ready to play up to the level that we all know that they can play, up to. I think it's going to be a very tough environment at South Carolina as well. I'm sure the noise is going to be a factor, but I will say, too, this Alabama team this year has done a pretty dang decent job, going to Georgia at least, and, playing in some of, that was a really, really loud environment as well. So we'll see what happens, but it's up to Kalen DeBoer to, make sure that this team is on point this weekend. All right, player to watch number 1, it has got to be the Heisman favorite, Ty Simpson right now. This guy is playing calm. He is playing cool. He is playing collected. There is no quarterback right now in college football that is playing at a higher level right now than Ty Simpson. You know, whether it's the pre-snap, whether it's the post-snap, just making the right plays, checking it down when he needs to, pushing the ball downfield when he needs to. He's fitting, you know, some throws into extremely tight windows that, you know, you sometimes see, you know, whether it's on third down or fourth down or whatever it is. You're like, my God, how did this kid make this throw? If you remember back to last week as well, Tennessee had Alabama backed up. I think it was the first drive that Alabama had the ball. It was 3rd and long. Ty Simpson in his own end zone. It was like 3rd and 15 or something like that. And, you know, he had pressure in his face. He just sidesteps the pressure, ends up finding Josh Cuevas for a really, really long first down throw, backed up inside his own end zone. This guy's playing with a lot of poise. He's playing with a lot of leadership right now. Really hope, you know, he can have himself a day against South Carolina, and let's keep that Heisman train rolling.